Government Study Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Opening comments. This meeting of the Towamencin Government Study Commission is being provided via Zoom for the public unable to attend in person and who wish to view and hear the meeting live. At our March 1st, 2023 meeting, the Government Study Commission recommended the adoption of a home rule charter, and the question for its adoption will be on the May 16th primary ballot. We will be hosting a town hall on April 24th at the North Bend High School auditorium. Public comments received by 6 p.m. the day of the meeting will be read during the agenda item they address or during the open public comment period. For those present, a public comment period will be available after each voting item. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes each. In addition, a public comment period will be available at the end of the agenda, and we ask that comments be limited to 3 minutes during this time as well. And next on the agenda is the approval of the March 1st minutes. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? None. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is an interview with Tim Hagee, the Warminster Municipal Authority General Manager. Tim, could you come up to the front desk, please?
Good evening, everyone.
Well, and thank you for coming. Could you introduce yourself?
My name is Tim Hagee. I am the General Manager of the Warminster Municipal Authority. I've been the General
I
Manager.
think you could raise the mic a little bit.
I've been the General Manager for a little more than 17 years. I've been in the municipal world for about 34 years. I've been an elected official. Been mostly in the water and sewer authority business. We manage water, sewer, stormwater in Warminster. Water and sewer budget. We have a budget about $15 million. So I can't seem to get enough of wastewater.
Neither can we, apparently.
Yeah.
Thank you. And could you describe some of the history of the founding of the Warminster Municipal Authority?
The Warminster Authority was founded in 1953 after the municipal authorities were enacted by the legislature. We started out small, and as the years went by, we grew. We've been in the water and sewer business since 1953.
And how's your authority able to keep rates lower than the investor-owned utilities?
In my written answers, I threw it the other way. And the question really is, why is their rate so high compared to municipal rates? And really, it comes down to local control. Local control leads to control of cost. We don't pay dividends. We don't have shareholders to answer to. And we seem to get paid a lot less.
And what type of planning does your authority do for capital projects?
We plan almost continuously with ongoing meetings that we have with staff, supervisors, management. We look at what regulations have changed, what's changed in our world, what's not working properly. Where do we have to put money? I'll give you a good example. We have a lot of cast iron in our system, and you want to change it out to ductile iron, but we probably have 160 miles, and it's a little over $1 million a mile. So you have to bite that elephant one piece at a time. So that's what we do. We make sure that we have adequate capital money. We change our rates as needed to make sure that we have capital money to continually invest in the system.
And what funding is available to municipal authorities?
Our funding comes almost entirely from rates, and we get every once in a while we'll get a grant, but the overwhelming majority is borne by those who use the system.
What can municipal authorities do if they don't have a certain type of expertise on staff?
One of the issues that is very important to Warminster, we have a military base that used to be in the middle of our facility, and if you follow the news, you've heard of maybe AFFF firefighting foam, and the chemicals that are used in that are called forever chemicals. And just yesterday, the EPA came out with new regulations or proposed regulations to regulate those chemicals even lower than what is currently recommended. Our customers consumed water with extreme levels of those chemicals for decades before anybody knew anything about them. And so if you could take those PFAS chemicals, they're called, make them into a brick, throw it at my head, I wouldn't know what hit me. So the question was, what do we do if we don't know? We look to our consultants, we look to other municipalities, we look to the Municipal Authorities Association to help us with this problem. But you know, our consultants were key there. As a municipal entity, we started treatment on one of our wells in 6 days. Now I'll give you a comparison. We're doing work for the Department of Defense at the former Willow Grove base. The current limits on PFAS, some of them are 4 parts per trillion. Very, very, very low. They have some wells that are showing 3 million parts per trillion. And that groundwater is going out to the creek, contaminating the creek, and they're still studying it. And this happened in 2014 when PFAS came out. So we as a municipal entity work quickly. We shared that with our neighbor municipalities who had some of the same problems that we did. We shared that engineering. We even shared our documents to help them. Water and sewer is a basic human need. So the answer to your question is we look to our consultants. We had, luckily we had a water specialist in Warminster that we utilized. But you know, in our business, we do what we have to do to make sure that we provide water and wastewater services.
And do you think you could tell us the advantages to having a municipal operated water system versus a privately operated water system, or any disadvantages?
The private industry, their consultants come in, they talk about economy of scale. They talk about synergies. I'm a Wharton grad, and one of the things our professor said when you're doing investments and people are talking about synergies and economies of scale, beware. Now, What can we do better? I told you we do water and wastewater. We have in just water and wastewater, we have a $15 million budget. PA American came out with their rates. We tell our customers, here's the benefit of being a municipal owned, control locally. We control those costs. If you utilize PA American's rates versus ours, they're 184% higher. So our customers would be paying, instead of $15 million, they'd be paying $13 million more. So proudly, I can say that we control the costs. We maintain those costs. My board of directors live in the community. They pay those same water and sewer rates that everybody else does. And I'll go back to the water contamination. We could have continued to utilize our wells, but instead we purchased water from the North Wales Water Authority, from the Forest Park plant, same one that North Penn utilizes, North Penn Water, at a much higher cost to us than utilizing our wells. And we put it to our board of directors and we said, look, we can continue to meet standards, but our customers have consumed water with PFAS chemicals that are much higher than are proposed for decades. They're called forever chemicals. It takes forever to get out of your body. So having local control allowed, our board of directors said that they don't want the cheaper water. They wanted the higher quality water. So that's another advantage of local control that we can do better. Aqua serves surrounding communities. They continue to meet standards. Those standards still contain PFAS at much higher levels than we would ever want to send out.
And then you mentioned that your authority handles water, wastewater, and stormwater. Do you see any benefit of handling all three under the same authority?
Sure. Stormwater MS4 requirements are getting tougher. They're tough to handle. But it's pipe, water and pipe. That's what we do as a municipal authority. We test water. We plan for pipe replacement. We test it. We test the water, and it's the same thing you do with stormwater. We took it over from the township. We have now the stormwater system has a dedicated funding source. So sometimes stormwater for municipalities is kind of a last item on the budget list. It gets buried. It's underground. It's not a sexy thing to take care of. It's not a new park. It's not a new police car. It's not a new paved road. And in Warminster, it got forgotten. We've got a lot of work to catch up. But we have that same billing system that is used. As an authority, we bill water and sewer. Now we bill water and sewer, stormwater. So there's dedicated funding for that.
And then are private companies able to use high technology applications that municipal authorities can't?
Not that I'm aware of. We utilize GIS systems. We utilize a leak detection that's cutting edge right now. We're placing listening devices in our system so that we can catch a water main break when it's small, so it's not a major disaster. So that we listen to it, like between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. They listen to the pipes, and leaks make a certain noise. We use a lot of technology. Our wastewater plant is right now where we are utilizing it's called an MOB system, and we literally dump sawdust into the facility. It helps the bacteria grow. There's only a handful in the nation that do that with municipal wastewater plants. we have the resources, and if we don't, we know somebody that does. So technology wise, I think we match up pretty well.
That's all the questions I have. Did any of the other commissioners have a question for Tim?
I
have
don't,
a
but thank you very much for coming out. Go ahead, Maria, I don't-
All right. Is it possible that something could come along and just be so expensive that you wouldn't be capable of handling it? But obviously,
I imagine that there could be, but let's talk about our water system. So our water system, we have 17 wells, and what we found is that PFAS treatment is about, in 2016 when we put them on, they were about $500,000 each. So that's a lot. That's a lot of money. Now we look for help. Some of the Department of Defense put treatment on some of our wells because they exceeded the recommended limits. Most of our wells are under that limit, but still have significant contamination. So we could put treatment on those. That's essentially almost replacing our well system. We could do it. We could fund it, and the rates would be affected because of that. We're also suing all the manufacturers of the AFFF firefighting foam to try and get recovery. The state's helping us with some of those additional costs, but we have avenues that we utilize. We're going to have some real serious discussions with wastewater sludge about what to do with that, since that contains AFFF firefighting foam chemicals. So it's possible, but highly unlikely.
Do you know your, what your customers pay annually for sewer? Do you know the,
Sewer annually, let's think, I don't know that off the top of my head, but we're at about $5.60 1,000 gallons. I don't know, is Towamencin flat rate, or you?
flat? Yeah,
So we're probably in the $700 a range per year.
Do you know how many are on public sewer?
Almost the entire households, almost all the households are on public sewer. There's very few with on-lot systems.
Does anyone else have a question? Would anyone in the audience like to ask a question for a guest? Yes.
They have to be easy.
Mr. Hagee, Mike Main, Towamencin resident. You spoke about local control. Can you explain that? Like if there's a project or something, how that would work through the municipality as far as?
Well, I think the good example was the PFAS contamination in our water, and having that local control, we decided the best thing for the community was to remove it all. As I said, the privates didn't want to do that, and they continued not to do that. So they continue to send it out. Our community was highly affected, so we could take that the needs of our community differently than let's say somebody who's not living.
How did that process work though? Like, did it go through a committee and then to the Board of Supervisors, or what you may have in Warminster?
We're a municipal authority, so our authority has 5 board members that are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So it's those 5 board members who make that decision.
Okay, and that doesn't have to go through any committees in the township?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for coming out. Bruce Bailey, Township President. I know it's hard for you to come up with an average cost per household for the sewer because you're rate based. where we're fixed rate per household. You mentioned $700. Does that include the tap water in and the storm water also, do you think?
No, that would be sewer.
That's just 700 would be the sewer, okay. Do you have other income into the authority other than your grants and the rates? Do you accept waste from other communities by tank truck?
No.
Um,
We have a customer that takes waste in, but he's just a customer that does that.
Okay, but you don't have a stream of tank trailers coming in
No,
and
not like,
dumping into your.
like Hatfield has a lot of hauled in waste. No,
Yeah,
do-
we have
don't
hauled
do
in
that.
waste too, which is another source of revenue.
Yeah.
To help offset our rate store, to our citizens.
The other way we have additional income. Now, we serve all of Warminster, all of Ivy Land Borough. We serve parts of Northampton Township
Right.
with sewer. We serve small parts of Warwick Township, but Warrington Township, we probably serve 80 to 90% of their public sewer.
Okay, and I've worked in Ivy Land for about 10 years, so I'm familiar with it, very familiar with the area. The PFAS is a new requirement, although you've been well aware of it being in the business. But the edict just came out. I think it's 5 primary PFAS that we're testing for. It's either 5 or 8 specific ones. Then there's a whole host of other similar compounds. Do you have a rough idea of what it's going to cost you over the next year or two to comply? Do you have any budget estimates yet?
To comply with PFAS, we're already complying with PFAS. Our goal has always been non-detect. The Forest
Oh.
Park plant that we purchase most of our water from is close to non-detect.
Yeah, I'm primarily interested in the wastewater treatment side. Does PFAS cover wastewater yet?
No,
So there's no limits on discharge of PFAS?
that's correct.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate, you mentioned $184 million more cost is an estimate if American Water ran your system instead of a municipal authority.
No, they're 184% higher than us.
184%.
Our water and sewer budget is
Okay.
about a little more than $15 million. And if we adopted their rates, we'd get additional $13 million.
Okay. Good. Thanks for clarifying that. Thanks a lot. Keep doing a good job.
Thank you. And just to add, I was at the North Penn Water Authority and North Wales Water Authority joint meeting. And they were talking about the PFAS, and they're non-detectable right now, and they've been doing a lot of planning for the next decade or so for that. So does anyone else in the audience have a question?
I had a simple question. You had
Could
mentioned
you
that,
state your name, please?
James Collins,
Hi, James.
Towamencin resident and taxpayer, ratepayer, all that good stuff. You mentioned about public control, about maintaining public control. What would be an advantage for you to go for the private control? Like if you were going, if somebody came to you and said, we're going to give you a bunch of money and you can go private, what would be some of the things that would stop you or prevent you from making that recommendation that you go private?
Listen, $100 million is a lot of money. But for us, it's about being cost effective to our residents. And we were on the chopping block. The Warminster Authority was on the chopping block about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were going to be sold for a little bit more money than the Towamencin sewer system. And they were going to do a lot of good things with it. And I'm not going to say that you can't do a lot of good things with the money. But let's Limerick. Let's talk Limerick. What happened in Limerick? They got a lot of money. They did some nice things in their community, but their rates went up the next time by, I think it was 84%. And that was the first round of rate increases.
You said the first round?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, it's cost. Municipal authorities have low costs. We don't pay taxes. We have advantage there. But again, we serve, our board is customers. They serve the community and they'd like to keep the rates as low as they possibly can. But also reinvesting back in the system. Limerick, I was at one of their sessions that they talked about monetizing, and the Limerick manager was a little shocked when he said it. They had like 16% of the community wasn't sewer, but they were going to get the services that were going to be paid for by the sewer customers. And it's just a little odd to me to do it that way, but I understand some people do it that way. It's tough to turn down $100 million.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Rich Costello, Towamencin resident. Just a piece of technical information. Okay. As I understand these new EPA regulations, I'm a toxicologist. What I understand is these new PFOA and PFAS regulations, the non-detect level is going down by a factor of about 17,000 or something like that. And there is a significant instrumentation challenge to even get to that level. These things may be regulated at under 1 part per trillion, significantly under 1 part per trillion, which is what you've said. 1 part per trillion is 1 second since the last ice age. That's how small it is, 35,000 years. So when we say non-detect, understand that that's based on the technology that we have, and there may be a requirement to go for significant investment in much higher capability technology to do any of this analysis. And, that's just information. It's not a criticism. It's not one way or the other on the system, but just realize what you're talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have way too much experience with PFAS. We test for it routinely. Not to bore you with details, but there's a requirement in the water industry every 5 years to test for new contaminants. And in 2013 and 2014 was a testing period for PFAS. And I think then they were talking about having the labs test down to 30 parts per trillion. And I think that's what it was at the time. And labs at that time could test lower than that, but that was their standard. Non-detect was kind of 30 to 40 parts per trillion. But now the labs are testing down to 1.5 parts per trillion for PFAS, but it's primarily a water issue, as drinking water issue.
Thank you.
Pauline Braccio, Towamencin Township President. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Tim. Okay. When you say that you could have sold the system for $100 million, but then the company that would have purchased it would have raised the rates by 184%, which would have increased by 13 million. Is that what you said?
That's generally what I said, but they were talking about 130 million or so for us. They never got to signing the contract. But what I said was today, PA American's rate today compared to ours today would be 184% higher PA American rate. And our customers would have the burden of paying $13 million more.
Okay, because from what I understand, and I'm, not understanding everything correctly all the time. That's why I'm asking questions. But are there any, for instance, if you have a contract, are there any stopgaps, like in the contract to sell the sewer plant with this PA American? Is that what it is? Okay. Would there be like, okay, we'll keep the rates the same for a couple of years and then raise them incrementally? Is there anything like that that could be put into the contract?
You can put whatever you want in contract that's legal. That's often the case. I did listen to the last meeting, and my understanding was that PA American was not going to have a rate freeze.
They were not going to have a rate freeze.
Sometimes municipalities like to do that. They have a rate freeze. It kind of eases the way into higher rates. But I don't know the specifics of the Towamencin sale.
Okay, so are there, your experience, or your knowledge, are sewer companies, not the private ones, ones you would sell to, PA American, are they under any kind of governmental control to keep their rates under a certain level? Or are they allowed to go as high as they want?
What I know about the PUC is that a rate case comes before them. They look at it to see if it's reasonable. Is it documented the cost? PA American is going, if they buy a system, they put it into the rate base and they say, okay, we bought Towamencin's system for $104 million. And they put that into their costs, and they're allowed to recover that cost if that $104 million is an agreed upon evaluation by the PUC. So they put those costs into the system and they recover them that way.
Okay, is there a time frame to recover?
I'm not aware of the time frame to recover. I think it all depends on how much they're paying for the system. What they've been trying to do is they have a standard rate that they like to get to. Aqua does the same thing. They're trying to bring all their sewer customers to a standard rate, so everybody's paying the same. But sometimes they do it in tiers, like they've done in.
Okay, so it's not going to be like a shock to the system because it's going to be a gradual increase, most likely.
Just to clarify on the PUC process, our 450 rate is the rate we'll get initially. And then the next time they file for a rate case, we will increase our rates. And depending on how they file, we might get their full rate or we might get eased in, but that hasn't been determined yet, and it's not in the contract. So one of the systems American Water bought in New Jersey, they had a 10-year plan to ease into the rates. But the systems they bought in Pennsylvania so far, within 5 years, they get their standard rates.
And how does that compare to, from what I understand, well, this is not a question for Tim. So shall I just sit down and then ask you a question later?
Yes. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question?
Joe Silverman, resident of Towamencin. When you have your own township do the repairs, excavation for piping, you said you had cast iron, you want to go to ductile or vice versa. Sounds to me a lot more cost efficient to have your own crews do it. You have the equipment right there, and you can also buy the materials a little more competitively. I don't think a big company would really care about pumps, valves, controllers like a township would, and they would just say, okay, we have to do this maintenance. We're going to crank up the price of the cost per year. So to me, depending on the wage structure of the employees, union versus non-union, township might be able to do it a lot less expensively than these big companies that are involved with contracts for wages and so forth. Thank you.
Joe, I'll add to that. We do not replace the pipe ourselves. We contract that out. We're a union shop. Our workers are unionized, but we pay prevailing wage when we do contract work. And
I know in our township, we had in front of what used to be the old Green Baron around the bridge, we had, I think it was township employees. You might correct me if you're wrong. If anybody knows, they were excavating and putting in some PVC pipe where we had the asbestos cement pipe, transite pipe collapse. And that was done by our crews. And, you already have the crew there. Why not utilize them? They're not plowing snow or doing something else. They're right there. Thank you.
And Joe, I know a lot of townships are moving away from having their public works work on sewer systems specifically. So, yeah. Would anyone else like to make a public comment or ask Tim a question? Okay, great.
I have a couple of other questions I wanted to ask. How many people do you serve?
We serve, let's say on the water side, we serve close to 40,000 people. We have 11,000 connections. So sometimes that gets people misunderstand that it's a connection, but the number of human beings that we serve is about 40,000 a water. We do a lot more on the sewer side because of serving Warrington Township's public sewer.
Okay, and this, that 130 million offer that you had before, was that for water and sewer?
At the time, yes.
Okay,
I'm sure you heard of the Bucks County sale.
yeah.
They were stacking hundreds a lot higher, 1.1 billion for that sale.
And how many sewer customers do you have?
We have about the people served is about 40,000. It's 11,000 direct connections for sewer customers, but we do serve some in Northampton as a bulk customer and Warrington Township.
Thanks.
Anyone else have a question? Okay. All right. Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
And then some of you may have noticed Tim is not Tony Bolito from the North Penn Water Authority. He couldn't make it tonight, so the North Penn Water Authority submitted some written answers to some of our questions. So we're just going to read those into the record. First question is, could you describe some of the history of the founding of the North Penn Water Authority? The North Penn Water Authority was established in 1965 as a regional authority consisting of 7 municipalities with interconnected water service areas. These included Lansdowne Borough, Souderton Borough, Hatfield Township, Lower Salford Township, Franconia Township, Towamencin Township, and Worcester Township. In the mid-1980s, 3 additional municipalities of Hatfield Borough, Skippack Township, and New Brenton Township were added, bringing the total to 10 member municipalities who jointly share in the ownership and operations of the authority. Question number 2, how is the authority set up? Each of our member municipalities appoint a representative to the North Penn Water Authority Board of Directors for a 5-year term, which can be renewed. The executive director and management team report to the Board of Directors at monthly public meetings and at committee meetings held a few times throughout the year. Staff is responsible for the day-to-day operations that treat and deliver an average of 10 million gallons per day of high quality drinking water to over 3,500 customers and 35,000 customers in usage classifications of residential, commercial, and industrial. How is North Penn Water Authority able to keep rates much lower than the investor-owned utilities? North Penn Water Authority, like all municipal authorities, has an inherent advantage over private investor-owned utilities when it comes to rates. Since municipal authorities are nonprofit, all revenues generated from customer rates are used to cover daily operation expenses and capital expenditures for the replacement of old infrastructure or construction of new infrastructure. In contrast, investor-owned utilities have different business model, which is for profit. They have a fiduciary obligation, first and foremost, to pay dividends to shareholders. Also, management of for-profit utilities receive much higher financial compensation packages, including salary, bonus, and company stock in comparison to management at municipal authorities. What types of planning does the North Penn Water Authority do for capital projects? On a regular and ongoing basis, North Penn Water Authority makes a determination of the operational condition of all components of the system infrastructure, including treatment plants, wells, booster pumping stations, storage tanks, water mains, hydrants, valves, and water meters. Money that is generated from customer rates is reinvested in the repair and replacement of the system components on an as-needed basis. The authority also plans for system growth so that increased capacity will be available when needed in the future. What funding is available to municipal authorities? The primary funding source is revenue generated from customer rates paid to the authority through metered water usage, which reimburses the authority for the costs incurred to treat and transport the water to customers. Also, we collect tapping fees whenever a single customer or housing developer or a commercial business connects to the water system as compensation for the previous capital costs incurred by the authority to construct the distribution system and treatment facilities. Funds for more costly capital projects can also be generated through borrowing by the issuance of water revenue bonds, which are paid back at generally low interest rates. Occasionally, state or federal grant money may become available if the appropriate qualifying criteria can be met. What can the municipal authorities do if they don't have a certain type of expertise on staff? Municipal authorities often do hire outside consulting expertise when it is not available through in-house staff. When warranted, North Penn Water Authority hires the services of consulting engineering firms, financial experts, human resource consultants, and legal counsel as needed. The Towamencin Home Rule Charter has a provision that would prevent Towamencin from voting to approve any water or sewer sale or long-term lease to a non-governmental entity. Do you anticipate that causing problems for the North Penn Water Authority? North Penn Water Authority is a municipally owned nonprofit authority whose most important duty is to provide the public with a safe and reliable supply of drinking water. The authority believes that a municipal water supplier with strong ties to the community it serves is the best ownership model to achieve that duty. We are strongly against any effort to sell North Penn Water Authority to a private company. However, our view is that a home rule charter of one of the 10 member municipalities, which potentially binds the other members from a future sale of the authority to a private for-profit water supplier, is not the correct method to achieve that goal. Such a determination is more appropriate for each of the authority's member municipalities to decide amongst themselves. And we did exclude them from our charter. What are the advantages of a municipal authority operated water system versus a privately operated water system? Disadvantages. There are many advantages to a municipal authority operated water system. First and foremost, the rates charged to customers will probably be less than that of the private investor-owned utilities will charge. Municipal authorities are nonprofit and do not pay a dividend to shareholders. Also, customers within the service area of the municipal authorities are assured that the money they pay for their water service is entirely spent on the operations and maintenance of only the local water system that they benefit from. In contrast, customers of private utilities are helping to subsidize the costs of the construction, operations, and maintenance of other systems where they do not live, since the for-profit business model spreads out their costs over the entire customer base, which consists of large geographic areas, often covering several states. In addition, in most cases, the management, employees, and board members of municipal authorities live locally and are customers themselves, so they have firsthand vested interest in maintaining the high caliber of quality and service to the customers. Also, local control is maintained by virtue of the townships and boroughs having a representative on the authority board, and any resident is welcome to attend their public meetings to ask questions or voice any concerns they may have. As long as the municipal authority is managed professionally, efficiently, competently, and cost-effectively, there are no disadvantages to municipal ownership of a water system. However, there may be some small publicly owned water and sewer systems that are distressed operationally and financially, which could benefit from being absorbed by a larger entity. Those systems usually have a small number of customers and staff with limited financial resources and infrastructure that is in poor condition. these systems are generally not able to keep up with the increasing regulatory requirements and do not provide a satisfactory level of service to their customers. They could benefit from the financial resources available from either a regional municipal authority or a privately owned company with a larger customer base that could assist them. And that's all of the North Penn Water Authority's answers. And next on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Marty.
Okay, we have some estimated costs. We're revising that based on some billings that have come in. We're also getting into our second mailing. So far to date with the solicitor, we have spent, let's see, it was estimated to be $21,525. And through the February bill, it's, for 3 months, December, January, February, we're just under the total budget. So, and we have I received an estimate earlier of an additional $8,000, which would cause an increase in from the original price of an additional $6,691. And that would be to run the solicitor costs or the expenses through to completion. So I'm going to be requesting an additional, again, $6,691. The mailings, we're now looking at our second mailing, which is substantially more involved than the first one. So right now, the second mailing is looking at $12,500. The first mailing was just over $3,100. And so the initial cost of $12,912 is now going up to $15,646. The Zoom meetings, the rate for meetings just went up $1 a month. So for the last 2 months, that'll be an increase of $2. Legal notices were initially estimated to cost $611. Now between the organization, these meetings, the public hearing and the town hall meetings, it's now just about double that. So that's an extra $616. So just to go down, what I'd like to do today is to get some authorization to approve an increase of cost for the solicitor of $6,691 over the original estimated amount. The mailings to increase the total mailing budget an additional $2,733.62. The Zoom increase would be a total of $2. The notifications would increase from let's see, approximately $612 to $1,229. That's an increase of $617. So that's the solicitor budget as over the original estimate to increase an additional $6,691. The mailings to increase from the initial budget to $2,733.62. The Zoom again increase $2, and legal notices to increase by $616.94. So I'd like to get approval to make those estimated increases. And in addition to that, I wanted to get an approval for some printing costs. Today, there were printing costs of $3.71, and an estimated for the town hall would be $300 $196. I'd like to get that approved.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
Motion.
Second,
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Are there any public comments about our spending?
Yes, was any reason given why we're 30% over on the solicitor's budget? We're gonna discuss that.
There were we provided an estimate based on the number of anticipated meetings and the work that was going to be done, and there was additional work that was done. There were several right to know requests that were submitted that we were required to work on, and there were additional meetings with the commission leadership that were.
So $6,000 to cover a couple right to know requests.
That's an estimate that has not been billed. The current billing is still underneath the estimate, but we do anticipate it's going to exceed the.
What is the current billing?
I don't have that number offhand. I think Mr.
I believe you said it was about 20,000.
Total amount right now.
Yeah,
So we're looking at the initial presentation.
What do we have right now is what he's asking.
As of right now, we are $20,000, $20,200 thereabouts.
and the initial estimate.
Those are the bills that have come in to date, as of.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
initial
February.
budget, the estimate, was that?
what was the budget?
I think the initial budget was around 21,000, a little over 21,000.
The initial budget was $21,525.
So we're confident that the 6,000 is going to see this through
That's-
fruition?
That's assuming that there's no additional litigation or unanticipated expenses, but we did try to be conservative with that number, yes.
Okay. We'll try and keep the right to know request down then.
Would anyone else like to give a public comment on the spending?
You guys have been in place for what, 3 months? Is that correct? When did you start? I know that this was voted on in November.
Our organization meeting was December 6th, I think.
Okay. January, February, March. So 3 months. You're already over budget. Where's your money coming from?
The township taxpayers, yeah.
Oh, so the taxpayers are paying for you as well as the supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what they agreed to when they voted yes on the ballot question.
Okay. And about the ballot question, I'd like to ask you that now if I can. The ballot question in November was, do you want a commission? And it was a yes or no. But then the next thing was, even if you don't want a commission, vote for 7 people. Okay. So anybody who didn't want a commission, but were foolish enough to vote for 7 people, they basically were saying yes. Is that correct? Because why would you vote for 7 people if you don't want a
I'm
commission?
sorry, the questions right now are about the treasurer's report. Do you have any additional questions about the treasurer's report?
Well, yeah, I wanted to know where the money's coming from. So we're paying double now because you guys are here.
The township is required by law to pay the expenses of the commission.
Okay, well then, isn't it your responsibility to not go over your budget already? I mean, that's pretty quick.
It's very difficult to estimate how long meetings are going to take, how many meetings are going to be necessary, how many drafts of things are going to be.
So did
Again,
you,
We attempt to be conservative when we put the estimates in, but it's very difficult to estimate.
did you pay Tim for coming this evening? Okay, I didn't know if you pay for speakers to come or not. Do you? No.
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Thank you.
I have a question too about the solicitor costs. So are we paying right now for 2 solicitors at every meeting hourly?
No, the policies of my firm is that whenever we are at a public meeting and there are 2 of us in attendance, we only bill for 1 attorney. Any
Okay,
client that we have.
okay, thank you. My other question was about the mailings. I just want to make sure I wrote down the numbers correctly. You said the first set of mailings that went out was 3,100
Yes.
and the second set of mailings is anticipated to be 12,500.
Yes.
Is there a reason why it's triple?
Well, this
Quadruple?
includes the final report, which also includes the copy of the home rule charter. So we're going from 2-sided flyer to now we're looking at 36 pages, 37 pages.
So does that include the printing and the mailing?
Yes.
everything? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other public comments on the treasurer's report? We had a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? None, motion carries. Nero, could you pull up the sewer cell analysis, please? Before I start, I wanted to clarify my public comment at the Board of Supervisors meetings. For reasons I'll go into later, the change in buyer is immaterial to this commission's recommendation. I have heard a lot of public commenters express concerns about the legal ramifications of passing this charter, but some of those same commenters encourage the Board of Supervisors to approve the change in buyer. Most prominently, Supervisor Marino has a vote and negotiating leverage in this manner. If Nexera is trying to reassign the contract, they are probably cutting their losses. I believe there is a settlement that is worth much less than $10 million where Nexera would agree to terminate the contract outright. Hence why I encourage the supervisors to table the vote and instead look for ways to rebid the sale. That way we could let the charter question be the referendum and the supervisors would be free to sell the system again if the charter doesn't pass. Jen, you made a similar comment. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
The commission got requests to hire professional analysis, but the Board of Supervisors did not receive those same requests, despite the fact that this change will result in a lower price. And the new buyer should be submitting a new rate projection because they have completed a rate test since initially submitting a projection. I'm now under the impression few people in this township care about how reputable the analysis is, and I will repeat that it would be a waste of our tax money to get an accounting firm to sign off on whatever we're saying. If you don't think my analysis is credible, that's fine, but I'm happy to volunteer my time. Towamencin seems to elect really stubborn people with regards to the sewer cell. Of the 12 members of elected bodies who are able to vote in a way that would minimize legal exposure with respect to the home rule charter and the sewer cell agreement, only Supervisor Joyce Snyder voted to do so. And I suppose all the supervisors have an opportunity next week. All these votes were taken with the advisement of legal professionals, so I'm sure we'll all be fine. I will no longer ask the Board of Supervisors to table their vote. This slide deck is abbreviated. A lot of the slides didn't change, but to go over the priors again, the sewer system is well maintained. The township does not urgently need money. The sewer system is currently budgeted to receive $5.6 million a year in revenue. The township benefit from receiving $105 million adds up to $3.9 million a year. And I'd like to apologize for my mistake at the last meeting. I said 3.5, but I re-added up those numbers because I needed another slide. And for my mistake, I'll leave that number there instead of pushing it down with a lower price. Any for-profit bidder will at least break even on purchase, and all scenarios result in ratepayers paying about the same price for upgrades. And Tim talked about PFAS. One of the things both municipal authorities and investor-owned utilities are lobbying for is to charge some of the source of the PFAS contamination instead of paying for that in rates. So either way, if we have to upgrade our system, we have to pay for those upgrades. And American Water is better than Nexera. They're not good, but they are familiar with the Pennsylvania PUC. They are the largest water utility company in the country. They have over 100 years of experience with water and wastewater. of the presented rates, they had the lowest cumulative rate impact of all the investor-owned utilities. They have a high enough bid to do township projects. They have established rate base, which would be able to better handle the possible Clemens Food Group diversion. And they have an established PA workforce. And if you follow me at Board of Supervisors meetings, I have set this to the supervisors as well. Next slide, please. And problems with American Water in particular. They are familiar with the PUC. They are the largest utility company in America, and those first 2 points are exactly the same as the benefits of American Water. I put those there. They are much better set to have lobbyists in Harrisburg, and one of their former lobbyists is on the PUC right now. So as far as the time to close on the sale, American Water will close much quicker than NextEra, and any hopes of waiting for laws to change are probably close to zero right now with American Water because of how fast they'll close. They have a pretty strong sewer acquisition trajectory, which will drive up our rates. They're actually much better than Aqua than closing on these sales. They should be up for a rate request a little after closing on Towamencin. They just recently finished their rate request, and I think it's a 3-year, 2 or 3 year hold until their next one. So depending on how long it takes for us to close, the implicit rate freeze will be a year or up to 3 years. And the PUC is getting less amicable to water subsidies. In their last rate request, they requested a 33% subsidy from their water customers. And in their slide deck to us, they said 20%. But the last rate case they got, I think it was about 13%. So depending on how the PUC feels in the next rate case, this might even get lower. Next slide, please. And the empirical sewer rates again, I did remove the rates without the water subsidies. American Water is American Water, so I would expect us to get their actual rates. Next slide, please. And there it is on a graph again. Next slide, please. In the exploration one with the empirical sewer rates, the difference between Towamencin's rates and American Water's rates is $822 a year. Rates would go up from $450 a year to $1,272 a year, which may actually consider capital improvements. That's equivalent to a $10.2 million a year increase in excess rates. And since we have American Water's rates, I used PFM's year 10 TMA projection of $806 a year, which does include capital improvements. And that difference is still $466 a year less than American Water's current rates. And that's equivalent to a $5.8 million a year in excess rates, which is still worse than the benefit we're getting. Next slide, please. And this slide is unchanged. I put American Water's rate progression on the last slide deck. And next slide, please. And there it is on a graph. Next slide, please. And you know the rates will go up either way. That's what PFM keeps saying. And American Water has had much worse rate increases in the last few years than Towamencin. And if Towamencin sold to American Water before 2018, our rates would be 3.4 times what our current, what our 2018 rate was. Next slide, please. Treat the sales price as a loan. Assume American Water will break even in 20 years. A 20-year, $104 million loan would result in $7.8 million a year in debt service. That's using the township's numbers, and yearly payments are linear on the price. So I just calculated that number. That's equivalent to a $627 a year rate hike. Our rates would go from $450 a year to $1,077 a year without considering capital improvements. And I think that is under their current rates. And I think 200 a year for capital improvements sounds about right to me last time I did that calculation. Next slide, please. The PUC formula, I don't like this exploration as much with American Water because of their water customers and their ability to spread costs, but utility companies are entitled to recover about 10% of system value every year. Assume the system is valued at $104 million. Supervisor Wilson said that was the average of the utility valuation experts. So that's exactly what they're going to get. Pay American Water would be entitled to $10.4 million a year, and that's equivalent to an $836 rate hike. Rates would go up from $450 a year to $1,285 a year without considering capital improvements. And again, because of their water customers, I don't like this exploration as much with American Water. And the algebra hasn't changed. I did not list a bidder in this proof. And this proof is found in financial mathematics textbooks, but I did rewrite it for an exercise. Next slide, please. The conclusions, sewer sale is nearly guaranteed to cost taxpayers and ratepayers $5 to $11 million a year in excess rates. That's a stronger statement than I had before, but a tighter window. Privatizing an asset that taxpayers are required to use is not a good way to fund the township. Privatization and consolidation are separate concepts. We can get some of the purported economies of scale benefits with competitive contracting and or publicly consolidating our sewer service, much like our water service. Next slide, please. And because we're proposing to use sewer rates to do stuff that normally is done with property taxes, I kind of back calculated what our rate hike would be as a property tax. Assume the current $822 a year difference between American Water and Towamencin rates hold. The lower 25th percentile of households are going to pay Towamencin property tax bill of $378 or less at our current 5.6895 millage. The sewer rate hike is equivalent to a 12.3724 millage increase, which would violate our class 2 property tax limit of 14 mils for those customers that have households with that valuation. This is an inefficient tax as we only get $1 benefit for every $3 spent in excess rates. And I do want to point out that American Water is entitled to put a lien on people's houses if they don't pay their sewer bills. That is a pretty extreme way to get money for the township, in my opinion. And here is the breakout of the use of funds that PFM presented. $574,000 for the homestead exemption. That's just a tax cut, so that's not necessary. $771,000 for parks, $450,000 for fire, $350,000 for the general fund, $600,000 for stormwater, $450,000 for facilities and equipment, $660,000 for transportation, and a total of $3.85 million in benefit, according to PFM. And our 2023 real estate revenue is projected to be $3.7 million a year. So doing all this spending would amount to a 84% property tax hike with a very crude projection. Again, 3.3 million without the tax cut is less than all of our projected excess sewer rates. So yes, taxes will probably increase, but I believe many prefer property taxes to sewer rate hikes. I can't tell how PFM projected our bond issue. There were some more detailed, details in their school board presentation, but I have a feeling we can avoid a lot of this 3.3 million by selling to a municipal corporation for the initial cash and implementing a stormwater fee and raising property taxes slowly to make up the difference. We just had a 25% tax hike this year, so maybe we are already on our way. I do like parks, but I would also question why park spending is the largest line item for a decision like this. I will again ask everyone to request that the Board of Supervisors release their plans for what would happen if the sale doesn't close. Those plans should already exist. And that is the asset purchase agreement termination language, section 1401 A. This agreement made by notice given in the manner provided by this agreement may be terminated and abandoned at any time before completion of closing by consent of both the seller or the buyer. I don't think there's a contract in the world that all parties couldn't consent to break. So I do think the township has some leveraging ability in the current contract. Next slide, please. And the asset purchase agreement resale language, that's section 15.14, future sale. If at any time before the third anniversary of the closing date, the buyer determines to sell the system, buyer shall promptly notify the seller and provide the seller with a reasonable opportunity to discuss a potential repurchase of the system by the seller. So again, I think Nexera is planning to lose money on this deal. So if they buy our system for 115 million and then sell it again for 104 million, if we bought it back, we'd actually make money on this deal. So I'm a little concerned that we are switching buyers. Next slide, please. And the timeline of Nexera's application. On May 26, 2022, Towamencin's Board of Supervisors approved the sale. July 20th, 2022, Nexera files their first set of PUC paperwork. August 16th, 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act is signed into law. On October 10th, 2022, Nexera sends a letter to Towamencin ratepayers expressing their excitement to purchase our system. That is after the Inflation Reduction Act, which was cited as the reason why they're exiting the contract. On November 8th, 2022, the Government Study Commission is approved and elected. On November 22nd, 2022, that was Nexera's last PUC action. I think it's a coincidence that they stopped doing their PUC filing right after the election. On March 1st, 2022, the Government Study Commission approves the ballot question, and on March 8th, 2022, the Board of Supervisors reveals Nexera's intent to assign the contract. Also, another coincidence. Next slide, please. And I believe this assignment is only favorable to PA American Water unless there's doubt about closing. American Water has little risk to entering this agreement. If the charter doesn't pass, they get a new system, no problem. If the charter passes, they haven't wasted much time. The township is losing $11 million without any real benefit. Whether it's Aqua or American Water, I don't think it really makes a difference, and selling the system between investor-owned utilities doesn't actually affect our rates. And I think this actually makes a lot of sense. If these companies could just trade systems to drive rates up, that's an avenue for collusion. And Nexera is likely to take a loss. And that's the last slide. And I will upload this after the meeting with sorry, could you come to the mic if you're going to ask a question?
The slide before this one, was that chronological order? Because after November 22nd, 2022.
Sorry, I did make a mistake. Those last two dates are 2023.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you about the ballot question now?
There'll be a time for public comment at the conclusion of Mr. Ozay's presentation.
Okay.
Would any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on the updated analysis? Would anyone make a public comment?
Joyce Snyder, resident and citizen. Kofi, when you upload those, would you please include the Math for Dummies version? Because when you put formulas like that up there, you're assuming I passed algebra. That is not correct. I'm a social worker. No. So seriously, I need a lot more information if you want me to understand the numbers. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment or two on what was up there. Once again, I'm not for or against the sewer sale. I don't care if it goes through or doesn't.
Sorry, could you say your name again?
Mike Main, Township President. I'm not for or against the sewer sale. Kind of against the way this commission's doing the home rule to do this. But a couple things on that side, since you asked, I would rather pay a higher sewer rate, the 450 up to the 800 than higher taxes. Since you asked, that's my personal opinion. Another thing was, it was said that Next Era or Aqua America, whatever, you held exception to that they could put a lien on your home for not paying your sewer bill, but so can North Penn Water Authority and any other municipal water authority. That's why landlords include water in their bills, because it's a lienable item. Just to clean that up. And then also there was the North Penn Water Authority presentation, or I guess they didn't show up, so we asked questions, but I wanted to understand why, or your thoughts on why it would be all right for them to be able to sell their asset if they wanted to, but not the Township Municipal Wastewater Authority couldn't sell that. I don't understand why there's a difference there, or even by law, if you can write that in a charter that one can sell and one cannot.
Yeah, so the Municipal Authorities Act is preemptive of home rule, so it takes precedent. And because they're a joint authority, even if we wrote it that they couldn't sell, they didn't have to follow it, so we just excluded them.
Well, they would have to follow it because they're not in the process of selling. So if you do home rule here, they're in Towamencin. And how can you, are you allowed to write a law that states that? I guess is my
I think you're
question.
misunderstanding what the charter says. The charter says that it's not intended to interfere with the current articles of incorporation for North Penn Water Authority or attempt to require the dissolution of the North Penn Water Authority. North Penn Water Authority is an incorporated municipal authority it's a regional sewer authority. So any dissolution of that authority would follow the Required Municipalities Authorities Act, as well as the articles of incorporation of that authority. The charter says is that there's no attempt to interfere with that process. The charter allows a sale of any of these systems to a municipal authority, prohibits the sale to a non-governmental entity.
But North Penn Water Authority, you're excluding them altogether, so they could sell
Right.
to a private authority.
Well, North Penn Water Authority can't sell itself. The incorporating municipalities would have to make that decision.
But you're allowing them to, are you allowed to write a law that exempts one and not the other?
The way that the charter is structured, Towamencin Township would not be permitted to consent to the sale of the North Penn Water Authority to a non-governmental entity. However, if the articles of incorporation do not require unanimous consent, the other municipalities agree to it, and then Towamencin would be permitted to do what it needs to do to effectuate that decision of the other
So
municipalities.
I'm sorry, but I believe the answer was yes or no. Are you allowed to write that into law?
But you're misunderstanding what the charter says. That's why I'm not answering yes or no, because you're.
It's yes or
misunderstanding
no.
what
Is
the
it
charter says.
allowed to be in the charter or not?
I don't know what you're thinking is in the charter.
That Towamencin can sell and North Penn Water can't sell. That's what we
That's not
just
in the charter.
discussed.
That's not in the charter.
Okay, so that can be.
It doesn't matter.
So you're
if it's
allowed
not
to
in the
have that,
charter.
that in the charter that they're not allowed to by Pennsylvania law. It's uniform. And
I don't know what it is that you're asking because that's not in.
is
charter.
the law that you're putting in home rule, the home rule charter, uniform by the state statute across the state that you're allowed to? Towamencin's not allowed to sell the sewer system, but North Wales Water Authority is. I'm asking yes or no, if that's allowed to be in there due to the uniform nature of the law. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm asking.
It's not in the charter. So we haven't evaluated whether that's.
Oh, no, I'm
not.
confused because I thought that when we wrote it, you weren't allowed to sell North Penn Water Authority. Now we're saying you are allowed to sell it.
No, we're not saying that.
Sorry. If I could answer this the other way, the Municipal Authorities Act is uniform. And because North Penn Water Authority has 10-member municipalities appointing board members, they are already exempted from any home rule provision.
Right.
So even if we wrote it that we couldn't sell the North Penn Water Authority, they could do whatever is allowed by their articles of incorporation. So we just explicitly exempted them from some of the provisions of our charter to make it clear that we didn't want to cause any legal trouble with them in particular.
Okay.
Hey, it's Bruce Bailey again, Towamencin resident. I'd like to point out a few things for the audience that are here, and also if anybody's still on Zoom. The whole reason this meeting exists tonight and all this discussion is only because the citizens object to what the supervisors voted to do a while back that was on the timeline. So we're here because the supervisors are doing things that the majority of the citizens of the township object to. I'd also like to point out to everybody that there are non-ratepayers here who don't pay sewer tax, and they constantly come to the meetings and put down the commission and the study, object to the scope of the study that's been done, and they have everything to gain and nothing to lose. But by law, they're citizens and they get to vote. I'm talking about, there are people in the audience, you can raise your hand if you want, if you're not in this, if you don't pay sewer tax.
Anybody who pays sewer tax in the future, and if you're a renter.
Pardon me, I'm talking.
Please don't stalk from the audience.
Okay, so there are township residents who get to vote for or against that are not ratepayers for the sewer. I'm just stating facts so everybody in the audience realizes it. Proceeds from the sale, the supervisors want to set aside to offset future expenses and to gain interest on that capital. Understand the concept. Those supervisors in the future can change their mind, whether the citizens agree or not. Those supervisors can leave office, and some of them will be leaving office, I think. And new supervisors will come in, and they can decide to take that capital that was set aside and spend it on projects. Everybody understand that next time you go to vote. Another point of interest here, the PUC is 3 people that get to decide policies, get to decide rates, get to decide who can run a utility like ours. There's a person, 1/3 of that panel has been taking money from American Water as a paid consultant, which he legally could do. It's all on the table. The amount of money he got, I'm not sure of. I don't know if that's public knowledge or not, but we do know he's been paid by American Water. Now he's one of those people in the PUC that gets to approve the rates if American Water submits a rate change. I don't want to be in that loop. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm fighting the sale. If 2 of our supervisors will vote no on approving the transfer of the
30
sale
seconds.
to American Water, if 2 of our supervisors will step up, listen to the people and vote no on that sale transfer, that'll help limit the expense of this study, limit the legal fee expense, and further expenses of the community. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shannon Main, Towamencin taxpayer. Kofi knows I am a sewer rate payer. I live towards the Panhandle area, but I did get connected to the sewer system and I did get my bill. So I am a sewer payer in case anybody was wondering. As far as the question and answer from North Penn Water Authority, are we going to get a copy of that? Because there was a quick section in there that you went over kind of quickly. I couldn't understand it about their take on home rule. So can we get a copy of that or do I have to do a right to know request?
I can upload that.
You can upload that?
Mhm.
Thank you. The other thing was at the meeting on February 15th, I actually thought that the government study commissioners might be happy in a way that it changed from Next Era to PA American Water, because on the slides on February 15th, the problems with Next Era, the first full 4 bullet points, the problems were that they were not a PA regulator. They did not operate sewer in PA. They did not operate water in PA, and they were a subsidiary Florida Power and Light Company. And a lot of the government study commissioners on social media and at the meetings have been saying that our money is being sent to Florida and not staying in Pennsylvania. Also on that same slide presentation, it talked about how the slide presentation from the Government Study Commission, it said how PA American Water probably did not overbid by much with their $92.5 million bid. So, I mean, they're still not off by much. And I thought that that was a good thing that we were changing from Next Era to PA American Water. My last point to point out about the PUC is that Kofi mentioned the PUC just went through their process of increasing their rates. So everybody's talking about this rate cap coming off with going from Next Era to PA American Water. But if the PUC just went through the rate process and they're stuck with that for 2 or 3 years, if this sale would happen to go through by the end of this year, they're stuck. They cannot raise our rates until they're allowed to go back through the PUC process. So we're automatically given a rate freeze, in my opinion. So that rate freeze is what Next Era or not with PA Water. I mean, it doesn't matter because they can't go back and raise the rates as far as I know until they go through that process again. Is that correct?
Yeah, our rates are going to start at 450. So there is an implicit rate freeze, but we're not sure how much or how long it would be. It could be a few months. It could be up to 3 years.
But once the sale goes through, so hypothetically, if it went through this year and they just got the rate approval increase, it can't go back again to the PUC for, I think it's 2 or 3 years, like you mentioned. So we would have the same rates for 2 or 3 years. So the rate cap, the rate freeze means nothing, that it's going away.
There's just a little more uncertainty, but there's an implicit rate freeze. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a rate freeze. Thank you.
Sorry, I yelled from my seat. I'm up here now, Pauline Braccio, Towamencin Township resident. Bruce mentioned that the majority of the residents of Towamencin Township voted or made known to the supervisors that they did not want the sale. There are 12,876 registered voters in Towamencin Township. I don't know how many town halls there were, how many people showed up who were different people. So I really highly doubt that a majority of the people in Towamencin who are registered voters told the supervisors that they did not want the sale. I mean, I guess Mr. Marina could figure that out because they had the town halls. And even if I don't know how many town halls did you have? Do you know?
There were 2.
Two town halls, 200 people each. That's 400 people out of 12,876 people. That's not a majority by any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, as far as voting on referendums go, referendums are generally very convoluted and are basically served to confuse the voters. And a lot of the times, however they answer that vote or that question, it can be taken the way the people who wanted that on the ballot, they can take the vote, whether a person votes yes or no, and turn it into whichever one they want. And that is exactly what happened, as I said, with the November 8th vote. The question that said, do you want a commission, yes or no? Even if you don't want a commission, vote for 7 people. That turns it into a yes. Why would anybody have to put down a choice of 7 people if they don't want a commission in the first place? Okay. And there are other referendum questions in the past that whether you answered yes or no, the result would have been the same. And I can give you an example of that. But I don't want to take up a lot of time because I have other things to say. I don't understand why. Well, here's a question. You told me you're a socialist, Kofi, last week. Are all of you socialists on the board, on the commission?
No, we're not.
No, and that's not really an appropriate question
It's
to ask.
incredibly
You need to, that needs to stop.
Oh, no, actually, it's very appropriate.
Are you
Because-
socialist?
And I'll tell you why.
Maybe
Are
I'm
you-
purple people
are
eater.
you a
I don't know.
fascist?
You know what? Don't be silly.
You're a
What I'm
fascist.
saying is, what I'm
Must be a
saying
fascist.
is,
You all left
if
comment, please.
this is my time to speak, is it not?
No, you asked the question.
Are you, well, I can't even speak because everybody's interrupting me. So keep quiet. My point is, Kofi, you are running for supervisor. Now, if you are a socialist, how are you going to take the oath of office when the oath of office says you have to uphold the Constitution? If you do not believe in the Constitution.
That does not pertain of the subject matter right now.
Well, it has, he spoke it last week about,
You have,
I fulfilled all my promises for my campaign.
you have 30
Right
seconds
now
for
it's
public
about
comment.
the
So you're up here. I have 30 seconds. Be quiet.
talk about the charter.
Okay,
That's
that,
fine.
oh, that's a very good point. When are we getting a real legitimate charter with actual data in it? Because whatever you put forth, which I don't have a copy of, whatever you put forth, I was sitting here and I was looking at these slides and it was concern, solution, and it was like 2 words. It was nothing. You referenced Baltimore City. You referenced something in Texas or California. You know, when are we going to get an actual legitimate charter with real data
And
proving what your opinion is? Because
That-
all of it is just your opinion right
that
now.
is 30 seconds, but we do have the report on our website. And
What is your website?
towamencingsc.org. And if you don't agree with us, you are entitled to vote against the charter.
Right. And how are you?
Your
Okay.
time is ended. Thank you.
Your time should be ended very soon.
Would anyone else like to give a public comment on the sewer cell analysis? And we'll have open public comment at the end.
My name is Cindy Bonero. I'm a township resident and taxpayer. So this gentleman in the back said there are people here who are not paying sewer. My question is, Kofi, do you personally pay a sewer bill in the township? Would you answer, please? Do you personally pay a sewer bill?
I do not feel like answering how I handle our household's finances.
Okay, so you don't pay a sewer bill, you don't pay real estate taxes, you have no skin in the game. So my question is, what's your agenda? Please enlighten me. I would like to know. I don't expect you to answer that either. It's my understanding that we have 25 miles of deteriorating sewer pipe in this township that needs to be replaced. That's aside from the sewer facility itself, the treatment facility. We have 25 miles of deteriorating sewer pipe in the township that needs to be replaced. According to the gentleman from Warminster, that's at least $1 million a mile. How do you propose we pay for this if the sewer's not sold? And how do you propose we fund the township without that additional money?
I did put it in the analysis, but either way, we have to pay for it in rates. And
I would rather pay higher sewer rate. We're paying $4.50, which was, our sewer's been low for, I've been living in this township for 44 years. Our sewer bill has been very, very low for all that time. The fellow from Warminster said their bill is, I believe he said $700 as opposed to. Okay. Well, you also have a lot higher density there, and you have a lot of industry there that we don't have in Towamencin. I moved here because we have large lots and we're more suburban feel, and I like that. I believe Warminster is getting closer to the city and more urban than we are with a lot more residents, and I'd like to keep it that way. So my questions, they've gone unanswered, so I'll just sit down.
I'm sorry.
If you're okay with paying higher rates, does it have to be to a private company? Couldn't you
I
just
would,
pay it?
I
to
would
the
be better
town?
paying higher rates than higher taxes, I'll tell you that right now.
Okay,
And the
money-
fact that it would
money
be
is
lean,
money. Spending the money.
Where
Would
you
you
gonna
rather
get- where
go
you
to Towamencin or would you rather go to a private company?
where are you going to get the money to pay for 25 miles of deteriorating sewer pipe that has to be replaced in our township? Are you aware of that? Where's that money going to come from?
That's a question for the supervisor. Not for this commission. I'm sorry, ma'am, can you tell me your name again, please? Yes. Your first and last name?
Cindy Monero.
Thank you.
And we're going to have public
You said
comment.
that was a question for the supervisors, but their way of paying for it, right, wrong, or indifferent, was to sell the sewer system, and you're trying to block it, coming up with no plan to pay for it. So she's asking, and like everybody else is asking, if you're going to block it, how are you going to then pay for it? I believe the lack of the study is the reason why there's so many questions here. There's not an in-depth knowledge or study or education at all. You're just blocking the sale, and you've said for the, I believe, the 4th or 5th or 10th time that that's the supervisor's problem. So you're going to stop the sale. They're going to have to raise taxes to do whatever they got to do. Then you're going to blame them for raising taxes after you stop the sale. I'm not for or against it, but I am for cleaning this up, trying to educate as many people as possible and bring as many facts to whatever this is as possible.
Thank you. And we'd like to move on. So if anyone new could wants to give a public comment on the sewer cell analysis, that's fine.
Just real quick, when they sell, if they sell the sewer, if any repairs required, we are going to pay for it in increased rates, regardless of whether it's the township or the municipality or a private company. The private company has a right to recoup those funds back. So either way, we're paying. It's a non sequitur question.
Please don't shout out from the audience.
If we don't sell, we have to pay. If we do sell, we're just going to pay the company who takes over and bought it. Either way, we're paying.
Please
If
no
it
talking to the
costs
audience.
$50 or costs $500, we are paying for it. And as far as a study, what are they going to study?
Please
Mr. Mayor.
stop shouting from the audience or you can leave. You're starting to disrupt the meeting.
Oh, the victim. Thank you very much for your time. I'll come back later for my comment.
Wow, very grown up.
Would anyone new like to give a public comment?
Nancy Becker, Township resident, taxpayer. You seem to question this reserve that the supervisors have said that they were going to put away, and you're making like future supervisors can just change it. That's not necessarily the case. It's your assumption, which is wrong. The money that was set aside can be put in a restricted account and used only for specific things, such as the money Mrs. Arnett left us to maintain Fisher's Park. The supervisors have never and will never use any of that money for anything but the maintenance of Fisher's Park. So if they set up this reserve fund in that way, which they have said that they're going to do, that money can only be used for that and not for anything else. So your assumption could be wrong. I also want to know when the slide presentation that you put up today will be available.
I'll ask Vanessa to put it up tomorrow.
Okay. And you already submitted the charter that is on your website to the county, correct? So that can't be changed.
That's right.
Okay. And I did submit a question for the last meeting and you never answered me, Kofi. The first time I did that, you very quickly answered my question. So I'm just wondering when you will be able to answer my question. And I do thank you for all, I know you're all working hard, but I really am in fear for what will happen in our township. Plymouth Township came out and said, no big deal. Well, their taxes just doubled. And, you know, as I said, I'm really concerned about the future of Towamencin Township. I've lived here for a very long time. And you're basing things on your assumption, and your assumptions are not always correct. Just like your slide wasn't correct when you had 22 as opposed to 23, Kofi.
Thank you. And as far as the township benefit, I did assume that they would use the funds forever. That's the $3.9 million a year. Would anyone new like to give a public comment on the sewer sub? Okay. There you go. Next on the agenda is the charter report. Neural, could you pull up that slide deck, please? Next slide, please. And we didn't really add anything new to the report, but I just wanted to give some examples of some of the narrow studies and government study campaigns. All financially distressed municipalities are, or not all, but some of them are mandated to have a government study election to look into changing financial procedures. 2003 Norristown study was initiated by council to get rid of the mayor's office, and that's exactly what they did. 2002 Lower Makefield petitioners initiated election in response to development. That government study ballot question failed, and development is preempted from home rule, so they couldn't have actually done anything about that with their charter. So I think their voters accurately assessed the misintentions of those petitioners. In 2001, Washington County's Government Study Commission was initiated by petition and approved, but an anti-home rule slate won the majority and ended the study shortly after taking their oaths. And in 1985, federal petitioners ran on repealing an existing home rule charter. They won the government study collection, but they lost the repeal ballot question. And I think those last three examples are really important. Those are the three separate failure points of adopting a home rule charter. You could fail the first ballot question, you could not get elected, or you could not elect the people who actually want to write a charter, and you could fail the second ballot question. So I do think voters have an opportunity to decide on whether they agree with the study commission or the petitioners. Next slide, please. And this is probably pretty hard to read, but it is in our updated report. It's a petitioning flow chart. Home rule municipalities with similar referendum and initiative procedures rarely see its use. Board of Supervisors have an opportunity to agree with petitioners without sending an ordinance to ballot, and that's what happened in Norristown. They got enough signatures, but the Norristown Council ended up repealing the ordinance to agree to a sale. But that was after Aqua pulled out. And really a dozen residents showing up to a Board of Supervisors meeting can usually get an ordinance considered anyways. I go to a lot of the Board of Supervisors meetings. Usually if there's a big audience, it's because a police officer is getting promoted and then it empties out. So for as much as I disagree with the supervisors on this one decision, they do pay attention to residents that show up to meetings. Next slide, please. And some information on amendments. All home rule charters can be amended. That's in our state constitution. This commission is not making any recommendations on amendments. If we were, we would just put it in the charter. That's what we had an opportunity to do. Amendment ballot questions can be initiated by the Board of Supervisors through a government study commission or through petitioning 10% of electors who cast a vote in the last gubernatorial election. Amendment ballot questions appear once every 6 years on average, and that's according to the Home Rule Charter Handbook. Most amendments are technical in nature, such as increasing bidding limits, and the proposed Towamencin charter is written in a way that would avoid those technical type of amendments. We've tied our powers to the Class 2 Township Code by default. And municipalities with a large amount of amendments on a single ballot had those questions initiated by the governing body or a government study commission. So we're not going to see someone petitioning to put 17 ballot questions on an election. I just helped a few of the county candidates get petitions, and carrying 4 petitions was a bit much, and I was not on pace to put an amendment on the ballot. Next question, slide, please. And that's all I had an update to. All right, sorry, form of the question, yes. And this is in the report, and this is the question you will see on the May 16th ballot. Shall the Home Rule Charter contained in the report dated March 9th, 2023 of the Government Study Commission prepared in accordance with the Home Rule Charter and Optional Plans Law be adopted by the second-class township of Towamencin? And that's a yes or no question. And the interpretive statement that we chose is, if the majority of voters choose yes, a new Home Rule Charter would be adopted by Towamencin Township on July 1st, 2023. Should the majority of voters choose no, the existing second-class township code and all its existing provisions will remain in effect. And that's all for the updates for that. And then next on the agenda is ratification of minor changes to the Government Study Commission report. We added the date, which is March 9th. That's when we signed it. We changed, or we added a footnote about American Water. We changed the reference to Tony Polito from the North Penn Water Authority to Tim Hakey from the Warminster Municipal Authority. And we added the charter, and we added the question as its separate page. And we also added our signed statement. And then we, on the expense list, we clarified who was actually maintaining our website and doing the mailings and printing as well. Can I get a motion to ratify our changes to the report?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? And would anyone in the audience like to make a public comment on this motion? Do you mind letting Rich go first, since he hasn't commented yet? Comment on just this motion.
Just there was minor changes made to the report. That's all this is right now.
Yeah, so it's a public comment on the motion.
There could only be minor changes because there is nothing to this charter. You need to actually make a real charter with real data. And the first sentence that this charter can be amended is all you needed. All that stuff below it means nothing, because you can do whatever you want once you get your charter. And I really hope that people are smart enough to vote no.
Would anyone else like to make a public comment on the motion to ratify the changes?
Nancy Becker, Towamencin resident. I just printed this charter that was on your website, and I asked you, is that was the charter that you submitted? And you said yes. That is not. But now you're changing it, or you've said you've changed it. But that is not on your website.
It is. They're ratifying the changes that were made before it was submitted. They're just minor typographical changes and a reference to the American.
Which charter? The one I have was proposed as of 3/9. That is the one?
That's the one that we're ratifying tonight, because 3/9's after our last meeting.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to check.
Would anyone else like to make a public comment on this motion?
Shannon Main. I just want to say a part about the amendment process, though. You think it's your opinion that there wouldn't be many changes, because you can have the same exact 15. I saw it said 10%, but the previous thing said 15% of voters.
This motion is about the amendment that was made to the written report of this commission. That sounds like a general public comment question. So right now we're just talking about the minor changes that were made to the report.
Yeah, I don't have my charters, all the revisions with me here, but the one section used to say 15%.
It's two different things. So
Okay.
the state law requires 10% for an amendment to the charter. For a proposed ordinance or to repeal an ordinance, that's the 15% that we put in the charter.
So the
It's two
15%
different
is
things.
still in the charter.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to make a public comment on the motion to ratify the minor changes? Okay, at a motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? None, motion carries. And next on the agenda is responses to the last meeting's comments.
Kofi, before you start that, can I make a comment? I would just like to thank the members of the commission for their effort. I'd like to thank the members of the commission, my fellow members, for their efforts. I would like to especially thank Commissioner Osei for his leadership. I'd like to thank the public for being involved in the process. Years ago, I was silenced by attending a township meeting way before sewer. This was years ago. It shouldn't have happened. I was asking a question. I'm glad that people now have the ability, and we encourage people to ask questions and make comments. So I think things are better. I think a ballot question for this decision is where the decision should be made. I'm a firm believer in that it should be made as an open question to the ballot, and that's what we've been able to do here. And I hope that people vote on the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. And does anyone else have a comment before I start?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. I just want to thank the township staff. Noral and Colleen and Dave, our township manager, have been incredible to work with. You've been here way longer than I think you want to every other Wednesday. So thank you. Colleen's been incredibly responsive and great. So is Dave. So I just want to shout out to the township staff.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment before I start? Okay, the first response is on taxes. I can tell how my life is going to be over the next few months, and I want to say something very clear. Kofi Osei does not want to tax your backyards. I have, as a matter of fact, never argued affirmatively for a land value tax and have never referred to this type of tax as a backyard tax. The other term I would have used is split rate taxes, because very few municipalities levy pure land value taxes. At the May 25th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting, I did say something provocative with regards to this tax, and I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking I was advocating for it. If you'd like to quote me from that meeting, I would request that you write down my words correctly. As an elected government study commissioner, I've only initiated discussion about this type of tax once when going through the first draft of the charter. Otherwise, it's been in response to a public comment. I also mentioned the earned income tax during this discussion, but that hasn't seen as much attention in public comment. Both were mentioned as reasons other municipalities have gotten rid of the tax limits, but Towamencin's proposed charter has had the same tax limit language in every version of our drafts. The only person who has suggested changing our financial procedures article was Supervisor Marino. Most other public commenters who have mentioned it seem strictly against the idea, hence why we haven't changed it. I am not shy about being tax positive. I think we should all love paying taxes to maintain our shared services, but the taxes I have affirmatively argued for in Towamencin are standard property taxes, a stormwater fee, and municipal sewer rate hikes. I don't feel strongly about it, but I'm also okay with an earned income tax increase on the condition that the township asks residents about it, either through the open space referendum or the charter amendment process. I can tell you all now, I am personally not going to be knocking on doors, collecting signatures for a tax reform amendment. That sounds like a terrible time. I seem to be the youngest person who attends Towamencin public meetings. I would like my life back at some point. I would think any tax reform amendment would be initiated by the Board of Supervisors, as they would have an idea about actually levying the tax that would be allowed, hopefully with a financial study and public meetings prior to even putting it on the ballot. Conceptually, I do think land value taxes are neat, so we can talk about it. There were some references to socialism for some reason at the last meeting. As chairman of the Allentown Government Study Commission, our recently retired U.S. Senator Pat Toomey argued heavily in favor of land value taxes, and Allentown still levies split rate taxes today. Allentown's charter also has a comparatively easy initiative process with just 2,000 signatures needed in a city of 125,000. Unless someone would like to argue that Pat Toomey is a socialist, I would appreciate some nuance when we talk about public policy. The first question to ask is, what is the value of land? The value of land is its potential development. If you have land that is zoned to be farmland and you're using it as farmland, a properly set up land value tax should leave your tax burden the same or even lower. Similarly, if you live in the Panhandle and live on a big lot that is not connected to public water or sewer, there isn't much development that could happen because of setback requirements mandated by DEP. Your tax burden would be the same with a properly set up land value tax. Again, this isn't a tax on backyards. If we're talking about taxes, we are talking about increasing revenue from somewhere. And so whose land has the most potential to be developed? There are multiple deteriorating and undeveloped lots that have had tenant seeking signs in this township for most of my life. The type of person who owns that land would have the most to lose from the increased land value tax burden unless the land is developed. In that sense, a land value tax is similar to a vacancy tax. Land value taxes take a lot of work to set up. We would have to make sure our zoning map is appropriate. We would have to work with the county to make sure land valuations are precise and frequent enough. We would have to work with consultants to develop per property owner impacts of the change. That is all stuff that would be directed by the Board of Supervisors. I will say, I'm not even sure Towamencin has the right municipal character for a land value tax. All the Pennsylvania municipalities that have this tax are boroughs or cities. There seems to be an implied urbanism with this type of tax. I've been made aware that Towamencin residents don't want apartments, so this tax might not be the best fit. And we heard it in public comment today as well. As I said in the report, if the members of the study commission wanted to change tax limits, it would have been easier to do so when drafting the charter rather than through the amendment process. Personally, agreeing with Pat Toomey on taxes is not a hill I care to die on. Next response is about why we haven't been following the DCED recommendations. The short answer is we don't have to. Fred Chapman was very clear to say that DCED is not law enforcement. Fred Chapman is not a solicitor, and everything he said was just a recommendation. I believe there are two measures of success for a government study: attendance, which I think we've passed with flying colors, and adoption of a charter, which is to be determined in the upcoming election. If our study wasn't proper, the voters of Towamencin will reject it. No Jedi mind tricks here. I will tell you all, if I had the power to force people to vote a certain way, I think more than one supervisor would have rejected the sewer cell in the first place. I'm not that persuasive. And there were a lot of comments about what type of government the United States is. I believe the most accurate way to describe the United States is a federal constitutional republic. That is to say, this country consists of states, each with their own constitutions and laws that are administered parallel to the federal laws and constitution. I am a little dismayed that one of these comments came from a fellow elected official. Our oath of office gives the hint: support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth. We don't have any federal initiative or referendum, but Pennsylvania's Constitution defines a handful of initiative and referendum procedures, most of which have to do with reforming the government. That includes this home rule charter process. I believe they are all in service of Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. Every single version of Pennsylvania's Constitution since 1776 has given people a right to alter, reform, or abolish their government. Those are some pretty revolutionary words because the framers of our Constitution did a revolution. I think what this commission has drafted is very in line with Towamencin's history. The elementary school I went to is named after General Francis Nash, who suffered fatal wounds in the Revolutionary War. Again, this commission was elected. The win condition for that election was a higher number of Towamencin voters than any of the supervisors have received in their respective elections. Obviously, this commission and the Board of Supervisors have separate majority opinions surrounding the sewer cell, but we both are doing what we're entitled to as duly elected or appointed officials. Rather than have a philosophical argument about mandates, we have a ballot question in classic home rule fashion. And that's the difference between the direct democracy and the representative democracy aspects of Pennsylvania's Constitution. Unlike the supervisors, we won't be running for re-election and can't do anything without the express consent of voters. I wouldn't get too caught up in labeling forms of government. Any real-life application of a type of government is necessarily mixed, and all constitutions are living documents. Pennsylvania has had 4 constitutions. At some point in this country's history, I wouldn't have been able to vote because I don't own any land. And look at me now, an elected official. Very exciting. And lastly, I wanted to point out that I've attended more budget workshops meetings than Supervisor Warner, and she has voted to approve as many township budgets as I have, which is 0. And I will open the floor to the open public comment, and it's 9 o'clock, so please give one comment.
Good evening. Joe Meehan, Towamencin resident. This is kind of a housekeeping, or I guess that's the word you use. I'm trying I went on the website and I was looking for the final report and the final home rule charter. I was confused about what the report contained. At the last meeting, you outlined a lot of items that I thought were in the report, but they're not in the report that is online. In other words, you showed the multiple concerns and how the commission addressed those concerns. That's not in the report that's online.
So that was kind of stylistic choice between the slide decks and the actual report, but I think a lot of the information is pretty similar.
It's really not. What is in other words, that meeting the last meeting had the court reporter here who was recording everything. And I thought what she was recording was the report that would be made public. And it's just not showing in what's on the website. That's what I'm asking about. How do I access that information that was discussed last week?
But the report itself is linked on the website. The court reporter was taking down the public comments and the discussion that was happening at the meeting. That's not what she was taking down, is not the report. The report is a document that's linked on the website, and that also attaches the charter and the ballot question.
It's only, in other words, it's only those things without all the information that the chairman presented.
The slide decks are not part of the report, but there is information that's in both places. So a lot of the information that's in the slide decks also appears in the report, but the slide decks themselves are not part of the report.
Yeah, and we can upload the slide decks, but
I would appreciate that to have that. That's really the question. I was looking for the information that was in the slide deck so that I could better go back and understand that and compare that to the report, but I couldn't find them.
Sure.
So I thought it was part of the report.
Yeah, so the actual thing that we're voting on is that written report, but we can upload the slide deck tomorrow as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the same as the slide deck that was here tonight, could that be uploaded also?
Yes.
The next question is, what's the next step for the commission?
So we voted to approve the spending to send mail. So everyone's going to get the report with the contained charter in the mail. And then this commission exists until after the ballot question happens. So we have one more meeting that is at town hall just to answer any clarifying questions for anyone who wants after the vote. And then we'll also be at Towamencin Day to do the same thing. But as of now, it's just housekeeping and answering questions.
Has it gone to the township secretary to be passed on?
Yes,
That is a step that has been completed.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Silverman, I was here when the sewer plant was built. Linus Liptak was the engineer. He's since passed away. He used to quench his thirst with the effluent from the sewer system. Didn't seem to suffer any consequences. This book here is it's a 1987 home rule law. And I went through it. I know it's not current. In Pennsylvania, there are 53 home rule charters. In Montgomery County, Bucks County, Chester, and Delaware, we have 18. Brinathan, Chalfont, Cheltenham, Chester, Coatesville, Elk, Hanover, Haverford, Horsham, Norristown, and of course, Philadelphia was 1952. You had Tredyffrin, Upper Darby, Upper Providence, White Marsh, etc. And from what I understand today, they're still the same home rule charters. They haven't deleted them. So apparently they're pretty effective. They're happy with them. I wouldn't be here if I were supporting a woke left-wing Marxist agenda. I'm against that entirely. Why do people come from Venezuela, Cuba, countries that, are communist? Stalin killed many more people, millions more people than Hitler. So it's pretty clear that I wouldn't be here if I knew that this thing would go in that direction. I'm a Republican, I've always been, but I think it's only fair that people who have no choice in the sewer system, you can't go to another company, and it's a monopoly. So, I don't see that we should be arguing about that. I think we're really people that have private sewer who don't pay any sewer fee are getting the benefit of the money if it's sold. They have no negatives. I think this is more about the charter. They're afraid that this thing is going to go ultra left, and I wouldn't be here volunteering, do what I've done. And these folks up here, I don't know what their political sway is, but I'll leave that up to you to figure it out. But I wouldn't be here if I knew that that was the intent of this thing. Believe me, 54 years in the township, just about, and I going to most of the meetings. So that's my feelings. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
Good evening, Rich Costello, Towamencin resident. I have a couple of questions, really. One of them, and I guess it involves the North Penn Reporter. So in order to protect their integrity, I need to ask a question. There was a Jennifer Foster who wrote a letter to the editor. Are you the Jennifer Foster that did that? Okay, thank you.
Yes, that is me.
Okay. Did you provide to the North Penn Reporter a disclaimer indicating that you are a member of the GSC?
I wrote that letter as a member of the public, and that's how it went.
All right. It's customary when public figures write letters to the editor, they put a disclaimer in so that anybody can understand at least what bias you might have in writing a letter to the editor. So if you write another one, I would encourage you to do that. Secondly, and I have, with respect to the sewer sale, I've said this before, that I have been silent on the sewer sale. My comments to this committee have been about process and accuracy. Your letter said that 60% of the community voted in favor of a government study commission to explore the ways in which a home rule charter could stop the sale of the sewer system. That's not accurate.
Rich, it was a letter to the editor, which is my opinion.
I have my 3 minutes, please. We voted to have you study the form of government. We didn't, the word sewer sale and none of that appears in the ballot initiative. So I just ask you to be accurate when you put things in public as representing the committee. Secondly, you said that the public asset, the sewer authority, is not in disrepair. There are a number of things that the Towamencin Municipal Authority has had to respond to over the years. The information I have came from another individual, and perhaps those things should have been considered. And lastly, you said that the voters will have an opportunity to vote on the home rule charter that would prohibit this sale or any future attempt to sell this public asset. That's not accurate either, because as has been multiple times stated in these meetings, that would not happen without significant litigation. And you did not disclose any of that in your letter. So I would encourage you to be more accurate if you're going to put yourself out there as a representative of this committee, and you should give people the right, or at least the opportunity, to understand the bias you might have. I'm done. You got anything? I mean,
I have nothing to say, Rich. Thank you for the feedback.
thank you.
Out of 12,876 registered voters.
Sorry, could you repeat your name, please? Thank you.
Oh, sure. Pauline Braccio. And you know, I live in Towamencin. So anyway, out of 12,876 registered voters, 4,674 people voted in November. That's only 36% of the total registered voters. Out of that, 60% of 4,674 is 2,804 voters, which equals 22% of the total voters. So Jennifer, your opinion doesn't count if you don't do the math correctly. So it wasn't 60% of registered voters in Towamencin, it was 22%. And of those 22%, how many of them voted no and then answered by checking off 7 names, which turned it into a yes? That is the issue I have with referendum questions, because you can word it in any way you want, and people will have to read it 3 or 4 or 5 times. I've had people come up to me as a poll worker and say, what does this mean? You know, because they don't understand these questions. I read the home rule charter. When they gave examples of referendum questions, they're very clear, concise, and ask a direct question. But asking about, do you want a commission? And then saying, even if you don't, vote for 7 people. Why was that put that way?
I'm going to address that because in the referendum handbook, that is actually the language that we are by law required to put on the ballot. It wasn't up to us on how we worded that. That is actually out of
It's
the
still very
referendum.
misleading, Jennifer,
Then write a
because
letter
if
to
you're
the
not
state.
voting yes for a commission,
That is
there's
how the
no
state-
reason to vote for anybody's
It's
names.
mandated by
Thank
the legislature of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This commission had no
Okay,
change.
but for common sense, for clarity, for conciseness, and for actually being pointed in your question, what's wrong with doing that? You know, it
Because
doesn't.
it's not permitted by law.
Okay, please stop talking when it's my turn. I really
You're
request
asking
you
questions,
not
they're
to
being
do.
answered.
I'm not asking you anything. I
You're
was
asking a
asking
legal
Kofi,
question.
and Kofi does not answer me. But I was asking him, not you, and not Jennifer.
It's a legal question.
So it doesn't matter. I was asking Kofi. So what I'm saying is, you know, you said, oh, it doesn't matter if you're a socialist, Kofi, but it does, because the breakdown of the different parties in Towamencin, none of them are listed as socialist. There's an other here that says 58 people are, but the total amount of 12,876, Democrats are 5,418, Republicans are 5,488. Okay, and all the rest, 1970 and 1,970 are others, or all these other independents. And I mean, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And as far as Pat Toomey is concerned, I never considered him a Republican. So if you are a socialist and you're trying to sneak in here under the guise of this commission,
I'm sorry.
I would
this
think
is not a political.
this as well, Kofi, I'm going to respond to
You have
his
45
comment.
seconds. So you
That's
could-
fine.
Go.
You said you want your life back. You're the youngest person here and you want your life back. Then why are you running for supervisor? And how are you going to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Commonwealth's Constitution if you don't believe in it, because a socialist is not a person who believes in the Constitution of the United States. So answer that, please. Then don't be running for supervisor. Because actually you have much bigger goals in mind for yourself, not for this township.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
James Collins, Towamencin Township resident, ratepayer, taxpayer. It's exciting. First, I like to say that the little incident earlier, I'll address that right off the rip because I know that's the thing in the room. When push comes down to shove, that's what democracy looks like. It's messy, it's ugly. People get upset, people yell, people scream, people get heated, and that's to be expected. One of the things that I think that, and I'm not even going to try to read the tea leaves on what people thought, what they didn't think when they went in and cast the ballots, because that's not fair. Just like I can't read the tea leaves as to who voted for the supervisors and why they voted for them, and did they know about the sewer system or did they not know about the sewer system? That's not fair, and that's not for me to say. What I do know is that as a voter and as a person who's been on this earth for a long time, and a person who's been voting for a long time, one of the things that I enjoy most about living in this country is I get a say. I get a say. When things happen, I get to voice my opinion. I get to come to the meetings, hoop and holler and go dance outside and the whole nine. I get to do all that stuff because I get a say. And what this commission is trying to do is expand our ability to have a say. That's it. If you put in a referendum and you want to have a question answered and you want the voters to vote on it, that's them getting a say. There's nothing wrong with that. Why are we running away from the idea that we have some kind of responsibility for our self-governance in America? Because that's what we're talking about. When these guys are saying that they want to have an ability for the common person to be able to say, hey, I don't think something the Board of Supervisors is doing right. I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong, or there's something I would like to see. And I want to get together with 5 or 10 other people, and I want to try to go out, get signatures so I can get that put on the ballot. Why is that a bad thing? What are we afraid of? Are we afraid that somehow we're going to make a mistake? We elect 5 people to sit up on the dais, and we come in here all the time and say that they do a good job and criticize them when we think they made a mistake. They have the courage to do it. Why can't we, as the citizenry, take that same responsibility of self-governance and make sure that we have a say? And if we're wrong, when we put something in, or we vote people in, or we give people an opportunity to serve us, then we deal with that responsibility and we keep it moving. But we're in this mess together. And whether we agree or disagree, whether we argue, fuss, and fight and cuss each other, at the end of the day, at the end of the night, we should all walk out of here the same way we came in, as neighbors. I understand I got 30. We should understand that we're coming in and we're leaving as neighbors. And nothing is going to change that. I'm not selling my house because I have a disagreement. I don't think anybody here is going to sell a property because this board is sitting up here. We're here together and we're in it together. So win or lose, rain or sunshine, we got to deal with the problems that we face together. If we have to pay more in taxes, then we do that together. If we sell the sewer and we pay higher bills, then we're doing that together. Either way, we're just here trying to say that we should get a say. And I thank you guys for your opportunity to, or at least your service in coming out to making sure that we have the opportunity to have a say. Thank you.
I just wanted to say I agree with at least the first and the last thing Mr. Collins said. This is what democracy looks like. It's messy. We get it out there. And I would also like to personally apologize for shouting down Mr. Collins. I was wrong for doing that. I'm sorry. But this is democracy and emotions get in it. And I'm glad we're all here. And yeah, we'll all be neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone new like to give a public comment? We're past 9. We're past 9. We can't accept any more comments.
We're only accepting comments from people that have not had an opportunity to speak yet, since we are past the 9.
I have a
o'clock hour.
question. I live in an apartment. How come I don't get any of the literature? People who live in apartments should also be getting all the literature that all these mailings you're spending so much money on. I didn't get any of them. I may be buying a house at some point and I should be aware of what is going on in this township. And you're not transparent.
We are using the township's mailing list, so if they're not hitting apartments, that's the reason.
Well, you're the commission. You're being paid by the taxpayer, so do it. Instead of being so insidious and hiding, I think that you ought to start being much more transparent about what your goals are for this township. Because otherwise you wouldn't be running for supervisor.
Would anyone new like to give a public comment?
I just want to make clarification. The gentleman from Warminster said that it's about $1 million a mile. And so that means Towamencin's going to have to pay $25 million to fix the pipes, whether they sell the sewer or not. If they don't sell the sewer, they're going to have to raise taxes to pay that $25 million. If they do sell the sewer, that money from the sewer sale would pay to fix the pipes.
The money from the sewer sale absolutely won't go to fixing the pipes. That's the point of a private operator. Sewer rates will pay for that upgrade in either way.
If it's sold, the company that purchases the sewer system will be responsible for maintaining and repairing any of the sewer infrastructure.
Any of the pipes?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood then. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. And our collection system, as cited by the township, is $11 million in upgrades. And I think the actual plan is 25 million. All right. Anyone new would like to give a public comment? And let me. And we did not receive any emailed comments tonight. Sorry, just to clarify, we had a contact form and that's not a public comment. Would anyone like to motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Yeah, meeting is adjourned.